coming to you from an unknown location, at the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains, bringing you the unknown. Welcome to another spine-tingling episode of Paranormal 411. Your hosts are David Reagan and Jason Scott, and together, they dive headfirst into the mysteries that lurk just beyond our understanding, featuring notable experts ready to share their insights into the world of the strange and unknown. So pull up a chair, pour a cup of something warm, and prepare to be enthralled. Here at Paranormal 411, we're not just a radio show, we're a community of truth seekers, adventurers of the mind, exploring the boundaries of the known and unknown. We invite you to join us, to share your thoughts, your experiences, your questions. Whether you've had your own encounter with the supernatural or you're simply intrigued by the inexplicable, we want to hear from you. So, don't be shy. Drop a comment and let's unravel the mysteries of the universe together. Buckle up as we journey beyond the veil of the ordinary, into the heart of the extraordinary. This is Paranormal 411, where the inexplicable meets reality and imagination takes flight. Stay tuned and remember, in the world of the paranormal, nothing is as it seems.
All right. Woo. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening. How's everybody doing?
Welcome you to the show.
Absolutely. How you doing, Jason?
Doing good, doing good. You can see, as you guys can see, David is out on the road again.
Yep.
And
I'm in Texas.
Here battening down the hatches. So we got a good show for you tonight. We got Dr. Richard E. Carmen, author of The Voice. So this is a good book that me and David both have read. Talks about his experiences.
Yeah, he was awesome enough to send us both copies too. And I'll tell you, it's definitely a good book. It's a must read, especially if you're really into this, into this topic.
So it's your turn, David.
My turn. So just going to let everybody know that we're live on Spreaker, Podbean, and X. We're also on paranormal411.org, Facebook, and YouTube. Now,
and X. Yeah, you said X.
I did. If you're also looking to find us, you can do that at paranormal411.org, Paranormal411 on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Also on Saturday nights, yes, that's tonight, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we're on WDJY-FM. And if you're in the metro Atlanta area, that's 99.1 FM. And if not, it's all right. You can still listen to it. You go to WDJYFM.com and listen. Or you could also go to paranormal411.org and listen. There's a little link right there. You just click on it, and there you are. We're also on Subspace Radio and all of your favorite podcast platforms. Join us.
Join us. You didn't get a breath in, did you? Is that
no? Just let it
go. Like I said, we have Dr. Richard Carmen with us tonight. We're going to be bringing him on. He holds 3 academic degrees in mainstream science with a Doctor of Audiology from the Kirksville College of Osteopathic Medicine. Spanning over half a century, he has served the deaf, blind, hard of hearing, and underprivileged. He's been an award-winning author with over 50 publications.
Wow.
Within and outside the hearing industry, including feature articles, cover stories, chapter books, and peer-reviewed scientific papers. And his work has appeared in top medical periodicals such as the American Journal of Otology and the long-running eminent magazine, the Saturday Evening Post, and served on 8 national boards as a editorial consultant and or advisor, including the acclaimed Better Hearing Institute. Before founding his publishing company in 1997, he authored books with Little Brown and Company, Prentice-Hall, G.K. Hall, and Rodale Press. Through his publishing endeavors and research, he teamed up with over 100 scholars worldwide with scientists from renowned U.S. institutions like Harvard, Johns Hopkins, Children's Hospital, Mayo Clinic, and others. So we're going to bring him on. Want to welcome Dr. Richard Carmen. How you doing, sir?
Good evening to you both.
Thank you.
I hope I didn't mess up the bio too bad.
Not at all. Thank you for having me as your guest tonight.
Thank you for accepting.
Coming.
Thank you for sending the books too. That was awesome.
You're welcome.
So this book, The Voice, A Journey Through the Eyes of Spirit, that's something outside of the audio, your doctorate degree, isn't it?
Well, it's outside my field, but it's directly related to hearing.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Okay. So what inspired you to write it? I mean, how did you get started with the book?
Well, to be honest with you, I never intended to write this book. I had an event occur when I was 9 years old. A being of light appeared in the room where I was sleeping, and I detail that in the story. And later in life, I decided to explore what that was all about. And probably toward the end of that exploration, I met Jo Stone, who became my wife. And pardon me?
I was going to ask you that because I don't think it ever mentioned it in the book.
It's there. You got to look for it though. And after we met, she was intrigued. She was finishing her PhD in psychology, clinical psychology. And within a week, I'd say probably within a week of our meeting, she said, is it possible that she might have an experience? At that point, I'd already had an established contact with an extraterrestrial group. So I brought her out to a remote canyon in Los Angeles, and she became a witness that night. She was so stunned that she decided to see if she could take a different path on her dissertation. She was going to do a dissertation on one topic, but after she experienced this, she thought this would be a fantastic topic to delve into as a dissertation. And ultimately she did. And during her dissertation time, my encounters continued. And she was a witness to extraordinary events until finally she said, you've got to write this. Other people have to hear about what is happening. The thought truly never crossed my mind. My encounters were ongoing at that point for certainly over 2 years prior to meeting Jo. And the thought of writing a book about it, trust me, was the last thing on my mind. I was working in academia. I had a contract with the VA hospital in research, and my dear friend Dion Swihovic had gotten me the position there. And so to go public with something like what my experiences were was just not even a consideration. She ultimately convinced me to write the screenplay. And so I wrote the screenplay first, and then she, within the year, this was 1989, she turned it over to her producer that she knew. And this producer had just come off a feature film that she had produced. And so as she was coming off the film, she read the screenplay. She said she wanted to produce this as a film. Normally you would be honored. I was freaked out. This happened so quick. I mean, we're talking, she was given the manuscript maybe on a Monday, and like the next Monday she comes over and we're talking about a feature film. I was still in the throes of major research protocols that I had designed. I had pending publications in a major medical journal at that time. It was inconceivable. I would have been blackballed in my field. I'm sure I would have been fired. from the consultancies that I had. And if the film had flopped, I don't know what I would have done. I'd have no income from the feature film. I'd have no income from my career. Nobody would probably touch me for employment, being as crazy as what the story sounds like, unless you delve into it and really study it, listen to the witnesses. So this is a long answer to your question.
Oh,
We like long answers. In reading the book, at the very beginning of it, right? You pose a really curious question right at the end of your prologue, and I found it really curious, but it is something that I think a lot of people wonder about, right? You pose the question, why are any of us here, and and how can we make that higher connection? And to me, I find that fascinating that you did, you asked that question right at the beginning, right? This is something that was on your mind and going through your mind at that time, and I don't know, did you ever find the answer to that?
Yes, I did. What triggered this initially was the experience that I had when I was 9 years old. And 30 years later, I was seeking the answer. When I was asleep in the living room at middle of the night, this is in Syracuse, New York, 1954, sound asleep, and I feel arms and hands coming under my body, and something is picking me up off of the sofa. And initially, I couldn't believe the depth of love and heart that I was feeling. I didn't think it was my mother, because she couldn't lift me off of the sofa where I used to fall asleep. After my mom and dad would watch TV, I'd go in the living room and fall asleep on the big sofa. And I didn't think it was my father, because there was usually he'll grunt, or there's a sensation that it's your mom or dad in your presence. And after I was lifted off the sofa, I still was feeling this eminence of love and radiation, a feeling that I had never had before. It was like my heart had been electrified, and I had come from a very loving family. So I was mystified. I go into depth in that section of the book where we don't need to necessarily go into it now, but 30 years later, I felt I had to get an answer on who that was. It wasn't my mother, it was not my father. And that's what launched my inquiry into all of this. And I began a quest January 1, 1985. And I literally altered my life. I was still involved in science and publishing and running the research and the protocols, but my path suddenly took an entirely different direction. 6 months into the quest, I received an extraterrestrial invitation, and it was telepathic. It was very short, 12 words. Palm Springs, to see if I can remember the exact message. Palm Springs, October 20th, come alone. You will create a landing base. Now, put that responsibility on a 39-year-old, and suddenly your life is off in another direction.
Yes.
That's exactly what happened. 6 months into this quest to try to find out who this being or the divine intervention was at the age of 9. Now I'm suddenly not even asked, I'm told, you will create a landing base. This was the deepest mystery I had ever entered into. So when you say, why are we here? What I said in the prologue.
Yep.
Yes, this became the quest.
Yeah. And that led to some other stuff too, because like you were saying, you had gone with a friend of yours to listen to somebody talk about UFOs and all that stuff right there. And during that, the guy was talking about this German farmer. And and then he had a bunch of pictures that he had for sale and stuff like that. And you just kind of going through those photos, and you saw one particular photo of this one particular craft that was, glowing red and everything, and it sparked something from that those childhood memories from you, and that kind of helped out with that process too, didn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. This was a photo out of a direct experience of mine. I couldn't exactly tell you the year, but in the 70s, my friend Bill and I were driving on the 405 freeway. We were coming, I think, maybe out of Long Beach going north. And there's an industrial complex before you get to LA on the 405 freeway. And at night, I couldn't tell you what hour it was, but it was pitch black, and we were driving north. And I saw this orange ball moving through the sky in the distant horizon, and it looked like just something was on fire. It just looked like an orange round ball of fire. And I didn't say anything to Bill. Bill was driving. And as I'm watching it, I realized it looks like it's heading straight at us. And I was yelling to Bill finally, look, do you see this? And he's driving, and we're in the industrial complex, driving through the industrial complex. There's flames shooting out of pipes and lights and light bulbs hanging, and there's no way he could see it. And finally, I'm screaming to him to pull over on the 405, which he does, and this ball of light, still coming at us, crashes on the south side of the freeway by these oil tankers, several of them. It fell on the far side, so I couldn't see when it landed. There was no explosion, and we're just sitting there, and he saw nothing, and I'm watching, all this happen, and he saw literally nothing. And I'm explaining to him what I had just witnessed, and suddenly a helicopter comes over from the right side to the left side, and it goes right over to this oil tank, the reserve tank, and it's circling above with its searchlight on. Exactly where I saw the crash. Turns the light off maybe 45 seconds later, turns around, flies away.
That's amazing.
I can't tell you what it was. I only can tell you what I witnessed. And then it was years later. I'm looking at these photos that this farmer had taken, and boom, there's the same image in the sky that I had witnessed.
Wow.
Yeah, that'd be some confirmation too, wouldn't it? I mean, at the same time. Yeah. You're like, I don't know. Am I crazy? Am I not? And then you're seeing this photo and you're like, oh, yeah. Yep. That's fascinating.
So at this time, after you seen that, what did your friends and family, I mean, did they think you was crazy, or how did they take it?
You mean after I saw the ball of light?
Yes.
Oh.
And your friend, you said he didn't see it, but
he didn't see it. But when he saw the helicopter come over, I mean, that was confirmation.
Yeah, something was there.
Yeah, and so I mean, this is just a strange event. You don't have a framework in which to put it. You don't know what it was, so it just remained a mystery. And I'm not sure how. I probably didn't tell too many of my family members. Probably told my mom, dad, and the immediate family. But it's not something you go out and announce.
Right.
Yeah. I understand. It's only been the last 2 or 3 years, maybe, of this show that I've even told people that I see spirits. Before then, I didn't tell anybody because I'm kind of a skeptic on things too. Because it's easy to say I see something and then someone else can't see something, and, to me, I'm like, I think that person might be fibbing just a little, and so I understand how you would be, I'll wait.
Especially being an academic, it's
Yes.
you can tell your family maybe, but you don't go out and tell your fellow scholars,
Right.
Yeah,
Because,
when-
in that kind of a field, even when academics in other fields try to even veer off and not go with the mainstream, not saying anything paranormal, just don't go along with the mainstream views, they'll get ostracized and everything and almost have no career. So I could only imagine, with something like that would be, 10 times worse.
Well, that's exactly what John Mack went through. I don't know if you know the name John Mack. He was a professor at Harvard, a physician, and he wrote a tremendous book. And he was almost thrown out of Harvard. It was a tough time. We knew John Mack back in the day.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Well, Joe, when she was getting into all of this UFO stuff, John Mack was one of the persons she turned to talk with, and on her advisory committee during her PhD, Leo Sprinkle was one of the committee members, as was Richard Haynes, I believe it was. Yeah, and both of them. Well, Leo Sprinkle was a big name back in the day, and I didn't know this until recently that he actually, it was a PhD in psychology, I believe he has, and he became a contactee.
Really?
And this was news to me recently. Yeah. So it strikes me that people who are open to this idea without putting a lot of resistance into the idea, suddenly can find that they're more involved than they thought they would be in terms of actually experiencing events. And it does take an open mind. Right.
Now, do you find that, though, a contradiction to the scientific method? Because the scientific method says, you try everything, right? You don't block anything out. You don't, but it seems like they don't really adhere to the scientific method when it comes to other things that doesn't go, with their way of thinking. They don't like to think outside the box, really.
Well, true. In science, you want to observe it, measure it, and see if it's repeatable.
Right.
And then you start building truth and facts based on that. Well, you're dealing with the paranormal, or you're dealing with extraterrestrials, and you're dealing with this area of exploration.
Mm-hmm.
So much of this, it's very difficult to prove. I don't think anybody can prove. Well, I don't know. I was going to say you can't prove telepathy because, it's coming from a source you can't see, and it's coming to you, and it's silent, right?
Right.
But at the time I received this, I think it was July of '85, the month of July, I received the invitation to witness their presence. And being July, it was 90 months later that this encounter would occur. And so the people that they asked me to come alone.
Yes.
I was alone at the age of 9. And I couldn't convince my mom and dad that the event happened with this being of light when I was 9, because I was all alone. And so here I'm being asked, or actually being told, come alone. I'm thinking, no, I'm not gonna repeat history. If an encounter like this is going to happen, this time I'm going to have witnesses. Mm-hmm. And so there were over a dozen people there. And so those guests of mine that were there knew that I had received a telepathic message because it happened. Mm-hmm. It happened via another friend. We determined the exact hour that the encounter would occur. It was going to be 2 a.m.
2 a.m. Yeah.
So it was obvious that Richard received a telepathic message. So, but this kind of interchange is, I think, a little bit on the rare side because it's hard to prove telepathy.
Right. But, even on that side, we have, not really going off subject too much, but we have our government that was doing things like that, Project Looking Glass and some of these other things where they had, like Uri Geller and some of these other, big name psychics and stuff that were part of those programs doing remote viewing and doing all these other things. And so it's funny how on one side of it, our government's into these experiments and proving that they're true in fact, getting really good results with them. And then the other side, you have, staunch people that are like, no, not even going to look into it.
Right. Well, the naysayers are always going to, they're just not going to look above what they want it to be, or what they think it is.
Right.
When I began this whole journey, the first axiom that I knew I had to surmount was all things are possible. If you can't get past all things are possible, how are you going to find the truth?
Yes.
Right. So this was very difficult for me because I'm coming from science, and I'm coming from academia where you got to observe it, measure it, repeat it. And I fell back a few times on this journey, to say the least, a few times, trying to make a discovery for myself about my encounter when I was 9 years old, and what was ongoing in 1985 with me and these multiple encounters. These encounters went far beyond me. It touched my family, my neighbors' children, and my colleagues.
I know, one part of the book, you actually talk about that, where, it pretty much showed itself to your whole neighborhood. The whole neighborhood came out and saw it. Even one lady that didn't even come out got pushed out by something she didn't even know so she could witness it.
Well, yes. Now this event occurred after I had been working on the computer doing a biblical research, trying to link some of my experiences with historical biblical accounts.
Right.
And I had successfully made some correlations that were pretty impressive to me. And so I'm driving home that evening. It's dusk. The sun has just set. And I'm driving up the street, and a laser beam hits the ground in front of my car. And I look up and I see a bunch of UFOs. I'm only about a block and a half away from my house. I zoom up to my house, park my car, cross the street, and I get the neighbors across the street, up and down the street, to come out and witness this. Again, I'm looking for witnesses. I don't want someone to say, oh yeah, you drove up in the street and you saw a bunch of UFOs. Yeah, right. So by the time, I would say 5 minutes maybe had elapsed, and we're now all gathered in the street in front of my house, and there's certainly more than 20 of us, and we're watching these UFOs, and they're not flying high, they're flying low, and one of them might have been 50 feet over my head and quickly moving across the sky. And after several minutes, they all gathered above our street and were doing a circular motion. And there might have been, I'm guessing, 10 UFOs. And they're pretty high up now doing circular motion. And this one gal that you were bringing up is out with us, and she's denying what she's actually witnessing. I mean, how many people would give their eye teeth to witness something like this, right?
Yeah, right here. Oh, yeah.
So
Absolutely.
so there's a group of us just, we're just randomly just spread out here, and we're all looking up, and we're just mystified by what we're witnessing. And she says, these have got to be balloons or they're helicopters or something. She's just denying what she herself is witnessing.
Uh-huh.
So
Trying to rationalize something.
Huh?
Trying to rationalize something that's not rational.
Because it can generate fear, because what she's witnessing doesn't fit into the box of thoughts and ideas and concepts that are locked in the brain.
Yes.
And so she runs back in the house and says, you're all nuts. And she goes back into the kitchen to continue making her hot dinner for the family. I mean, it wasn't maybe a minute later, we hear her screaming at the top of her lungs. She is being pushed out of the house by a force that she cannot see. She crashes through the screen door and almost over the railing. She's running out so fast and into the arms of her husband, who's standing next to me. And she's screaming, they're pushing me, they're pushing me. Now,
that's amazing.
It might seem amusing because we're telling a story that happened decades ago, but in the moment,
oh yeah, it'd be scary.
We're talking fear. We're talking 911 fear.
Right.
So, and this fear is something that I myself have experienced. So it's the real deal. I mean, you when you encounter something that you have no place to put this, you have no experience, you have no knowledge, you have no way to understand what you're witnessing, but you're seeing it, and you see what's going on. It's scary. It can be scary. That at that point that happened late in my series of encounters, and I tried to soothe her and ease her from the pain. But I did understand what she was going through. And I was fearless only because by that point, I understood what was going on.
Right. You believe it was like a teaching moment where they wanted everybody to see this?
Yes. I think that, well, my observation is that they reach a point where they're just fed up with humans. You know, if you go back to a later chapter in the book where I meet Dr. Andrea Puharich, a remarkable human being. He had, his group had channeled a species called Huva, and they projected a voice known as spectra. And they were talking about every X thousands of years, Huva comes to Earth to visit. Yep. And in this particular,
I think you said like 3,000 or 6,000 years, wasn't it? Something like that.
Every 6,000 years. And during this one encounter, Dr. Puharich, or one of those in the group, said, so if it's every 6,000 years you come here, how long was the last time you were here? And they said 6,000 years ago. So the idea was, well, then you're about to return? And they said, we're not sure. And the qualification was because humans either fear them or they worship them.
That's right, deify them. Yeah.
And so, you know, I was a witness to the level of fear. I mean, it was right there in my presence as the 20, actually turned out to be more than probably 25 of us. Traffic. I lived on sort of a kind of a dead end street. It was a T that kind of didn't go anywhere. So we didn't get a lot of traffic. But a couple cars came by, and they stopped and they were looking. So we probably had more than 25 people there witnessing all of this. And so, yes, the fear, it hinders growth. Right. I say in my story in the book, The Voice, that it's self-annihilation. I know because I experienced it.
Right. That doctor you was just talking about, was he not also the one that got you to meet, what's his name, Tom? Oh,
yes, Timothy.
Thomas.
Yes, well, if you're talking about Timothy, who was
Timothy, that's it. Yes, sir.
A space kid, yeah.
Yep.
Dr. Puharich worked with over 100 space kids. When I had met him, he called them star children.
Star children, yeah.
And this was just mind-boggling. I mean, there are so many events that were woven into my experiences. This was one of them, and it was very enlightening. He asked if I would like to meet one of the star children, and who wouldn't, right?
Right.
It's not a spirit, we're talking flesh and blood,
Yeah.
theoretically, anyway. And so I said, sure. And so he arranged this star child to come over to Joe's house, and Joe and I sat down with him, and we had an extraordinary time with him. He had abilities that were not of the earth. He could see through solid matter, and he didn't have to put himself in a long trance to do it. He could just look, and he could see through matter. He had knowledge that he shouldn't have about who's who and who you are and your history, and just remarkable. And I was blessed to have met somebody like that. Dr. Puharich had revealed in the process of multiple conversations over a period of time with him, over years, and knowing him, had revealed that there is an extraterrestrial intervention that is happening, has happened, and is continuing to happen, where there is actually genetic intervention. So humans are going to be developing in ways that you can't even imagine. They'll be developing like Timothy. I don't know how long it will take, but I know that he said that if there wasn't that kind of intervention, it would take, by normal evolution, about 250,000 years to reach that level.
Wow.
So there's a moral question that comes into this, intervening in human biology and genetics. Is it right? Is it wrong? I've been in science so long, I have my own opinion, and I think if you can advance biology and genetics, I'd say go for it.
Right.
But then there are other philosophies that how dare you play? You're playing God. So it's a tough call.
I can see it on both sides, because on one side, you don't want to be gods because you don't like it when people deify you, but at the same time, you're almost playing God by coming in and genetically modifying people and doing whatever it is that they have that they're doing.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's definitely playing the middle road somewhere, like between the two.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So while we're talking about God and things like that, what role does spirituality play in all this? Is it connected?
Yes, it's intimately connected. My goal was never to have extraterrestrial contact. That was never something I was seeking. It happened, but ultimately, when I began my quest, January 1, 1985, I was looking to explain my living room encounter with the being of light, thinking and believing that was a divine moment. It was extraordinary, absolutely extraordinary. It was a one-of-a-kind event. I never had that kind of event occur again. Had many other spiritual and divine moments, but that kind of event never occurred again. So I was interpreting this as a divine intervention as I got older. And so, divine, yes. Then, of course, as Jason, you're asking, the search for God, is there even a God? At some point, 1985, 86, I was still questioning, if there's God, why is there such misery in the world? The whole philosophy of Buddhism is based on stop suffering, stop the suffering. How are you going to deal with suffering? And even if your life is perfect, you can't control the lives of other people that you love. Your mom, your dad, your kids, your friends, your neighbors, and such tragedies occur in life that cause suffering. So, it becomes a question of if there is a God, why is there such suffering? Right? And many, many books have been written about this.
Yeah.
So, and that became the core of my quest. To find out, how can I touch the divine? And the extraterrestrial interaction with me is what kind of pushed me in the direction of the divine. And so I'm grateful for that interaction, but I'm most grateful, truthfully, for having really discovered what I felt was the divine in my life.
Yeah, a lot of near-death experiences, when they tell their story, they tell the same thing you did, that it was just overwhelming love and light.
Yeah.
I do believe there's a connection between that and your experiences.
Well, my experience when I was 9 years old was exactly that.
Yeah.
It was remarkable. It was as if some sort of spirit entered me and opened up my heart. I came from an incredibly loving family, Like, who thought I could love any more than that? But it was, I just describe it in the book as almost biochemical. I mean, it was like neuronal. It was every fiber in my body had become awakened. It was extraordinary.
Yeah. It'd have to be divine to do all that, I believe, to make you feel that way. And I wanted to ask you, I had an experience, I think, with a dream. I'm going to tell this dream that I had, and it's about extraterrestrials. But I was sick last year for 6 months, and I didn't really know it for maybe 3 months that I was sick. What had happened, one of my lungs had got fluid around it and collapsed, and my heart was out of rhythm. And I had this dream before I was going to be, they was going to try to shock my heart back and everything. And it was a dream about this extraterrestrials. They looked just like us, and they came, and I went outside, and somehow I was just paralyzed. They had got me on the ground paralyzed, and this human, it looked human to me, stuck his hand on my chest and saying I needed to go with them. And I told him, I had family that I didn't want to leave and everything. So he just showed me a bunch of things. And I just wonder if that was just a crazy dream, or it felt so real. And I usually don't remember my dreams.
Let me ask you, after you had the dream, were you healed?
I'm fine now. Yes.
How soon after the dream?
Well, when I had the procedure, after that, I've been doing real well. And it was maybe 2 weeks before the procedure that I had this dream.
Dreams are an amazing thing.
And it's just funny to me that it happened like that. I mean, I wasn't expecting it. I wasn't expecting to get healed by anything. I was just, it made me feel better about everything.
Before my experiences, I would have said that's quite a coincidence. Not now.
Yeah.
Not now. No, because I do really believe all things are possible. So yes, you could have had you could have had what psychologists call a precognitive dream.
Yeah.
Where you actually are interacting at another level, maybe another dimension, and almost certainly another dimension. I've had 3 precognitive dreams, only 3. 2 of them are in the book. And much like what you're talking about. But those dream, or that dream state, was a transfer of information for me. And what's so remarkable is I wasn't asleep. I was exhausted, laid down, and I tell this in the book. I laid down for what I thought was going to be just a rest, because I was just wiped out. And I laid down on my back on top of the covers of the bed, and I went somewhere. And I was given information in a fully conscious state, came back, and I still had the information vivid in my memory. And in that particular, after that particular dream state, I had a vision that appeared in the room, and I go into discussing what that was.
That's one of my questions.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
So to answer Jason's question from my point of view is absolutely positively, dreams can be an indicator of future events, can be a suggestion for healing, or the event itself can be a healing experience. So dreams are powerful.
Yeah. So do you think it was contact? I mean, from that?
Hard for me to know. I don't know that anybody can answer that question. You might be the best to answer that question.
Right.
But again, firmly believing all things are possible. Yes. Could that have been an encounter at another level? Absolutely. In fact, I believe that kind of thing is happening around the world to soften the blow when the real deal comes out.
Yeah.
Where we're talking about a landing.
That'd be nice. I hope we're still around.
I hope I am too.
So David, you said you had a question?
Well, he just brought it up. He had a dream, or like he was saying, probably a precognition, but when he woke up, there was something vivid in front of his face. He could see them, and it took about 3 minutes or so, I think, before they finally dissipated. And what was cool about it was, if I'm not mistaken, it was Adele that you went to see afterwards.
Yep.
Sometime afterwards, and then you saw one of these objects hanging on her wall.
Good memory.
And
yes, exactly.
If you want to tell a little bit about that.
After I came out of that state, in the book, it's I describe it. It can be a lucid dream. It can be a precognitive dream. I don't know what to call it, because I just don't have a name for it. But when I came out of that dream state, I sat up in bed. There was a holographic image right in front of my face. And on one side looked like 2 screens of a computer, and with lights flickering. And the other side was this contraption. I didn't know what the heck this thing was. It was a bent up, like a black bent up coat hanger with some doodad on one end hanging and something else on the other end. And it was just floating right in front of my face. And so I put my hand forward, and it went right through the hologram. And I'm just stunned. And I don't know what this computer thing is. I don't know what this wire thing is. and suddenly it just dissolves. It's gone. So I'm just baffled. A matter of days later, I get to meet Adele Tinning. And Adele Tinning was a medium back then. I think this is 1985, so she's got to be late 70s at least at that point. And she was just remarkable. Friends of mine had told me, and she was down in San Diego and I was up in LA, but friends of mine had been to her and said, "You've got to experience this woman." So I go down and I go to her house, and well, actually, the first time I met her, I had gone to the Scottish Rite Temple. That's where she used to present. And there'd be 100 or 150 people in the room. But in the book, I tell the story about when I went down there with Joe. On the wall, we're in the kitchen, her kitchen, and there's a little pine table that only seats 4 people. And Adele, Joe, and I are sitting around. And after the session, I stand up and I turn around, and eye level with me is that wire contraption, which I had no idea what this thing was. And I said to Adele, "What the heck is this thing?" She says, "It's a divining rod." I said, "Well, a divining rod, I'm thinking, you've got 2 wires, but like this thing has got contraptions on it." She says, "Well, that one is too old. It won't work anymore." But that answered at least one question of what that was in the vision. And it took quite a bit of time to figure out what the computer thing was, which by the end of the book, the reader will find out what that is.
Yeah, and I think that you kind of hit on it a little bit earlier, and when we was talking, kind of what you was going through with that part of it, and I think that what you was doing with the 2 screens, right, is pretty fascinating. I guess maybe when we come back from break, maybe we'll talk a little bit about that, because
Sure.
Where you was going in depth and actually looking up these words and finding out true meanings of these words, Old Testament, New Testament, and trying to find the truth, right? The truth between this stuff, and where that kind of led you to. I think that was really fascinating.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
I'm telling you, everybody's got to read this book, because by the time you're at the end, you're like, it's the end. No. It's good. It's a good read.
Thank you.
All right. So I guess we'll stop there and take a quick break. That's all right with you?
Sure.
Okay. So I want to thank everybody for listening on YouTube and watching Facebook and Twitter and all of them. We got quite a few.
Yeah.
David, you want to say anything before the break?
Just remind everybody that we have a new book coming out soon.
Yes.
It's in the process of being, what are we on our 4th iteration of going through it, Jason? And
Yes.
having other people read it and look at it and stuff. And if you want to help us out in that endeavor, you could email us at info@paranormal411.org. That's info@paranormal411.org. And just put, you'd like to help us proofread the book or something. And we'll definitely send you out a PDF copy of the book, so you could look it over, and we'd definitely appreciate everybody that does that. And remember, if you are looking for us, you can do that at paranormal411.org. Paranormal 411 on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter.
Oh, yeah. All right. We'll be back right after this.
What if the world we know is merely a fraction of reality? What if there are forces, entities, and phenomena that exist just beyond our comprehension in the shadows of the unknown? Welcome to Paranormal 411, your gateway to the unexplained and the downright chilling. Imagine, if you will, a quiet, sleepy town tucked away from the hustle and bustle of the city. The locals tell tales of a house atop a hill where strange lights flicker and eerie sounds echo in the dead of night. Some say it's haunted, others claim it's a portal to another realm. Whatever the truth, one thing is certain: those who venture there are never quite the same. Or picture this: a clear, starry night in the heart of the desert. Suddenly a blinding flash cuts across the sky, a craft of unknown origin moving at impossible speeds. It hovers, then vanishes, leaving only questions and a sense of awe. Could it be visitors from another world, or perhaps a secret government project? These stories, these encounters with the unknown, are what we love here at Paranormal 411. Our mission? To explore the unexplored, to question the unquestioned, and to shine a light into the darkest corners of the paranormal. We've journeyed through haunted houses and UFO sightings, and into the mysteries of cryptids and psychic phenomena, and pondered the existence of other dimensions. And yet, there is so much more to discover. Paranormal 411 is your guide to the unexplained and the extraordinary. Here we talk about the mysteries that lurk in the shadows of our world, from haunted houses and UFO sightings to cryptids and psychic phenomena. We love to question, to explore, and to understand the unknown. There's a world of mystery out there just waiting to be discovered. So why not join us on this journey into the unknown? Subscribe to our YouTube channel and become a part of the Paranormal 411 community. Together, we can uncover the secrets that the universe holds. Welcome to Paranormal 411. Your journey into the unknown starts here. Join us.
In the heart of Madisonville, Tennessee, lies a pizzeria like no other. Step through the door of Legends and Lore Pizzeria and be transported to a realm where paranormal and cryptid encounters, along with mouth-watering pizza, go hand in hand. Meet Eddie and his crew, who serve up slices of the supernatural along with the best pies in town. With the walls adorned with eerie artifacts, indulge in piping hot slices that melt in your mouth and tease your taste buds. And it's not just the locals who love the incredible pizza. Legends and Lore has been selected as the best pizza joint in all of Monroe County. As lovers of everything pizza and the paranormal, the owners have mastered the art of crafting unforgettable combinations that will leave you wanting more. To stay connected with this mystical eatery, follow Legends and Lore Pizzeria on Facebook, where tales of their latest creations and upcoming specials will be shared. Make sure to browse their custom menu, featuring legendary pizzas like the Chupacabra Ranch and the Exorcist. So, whether you have an appetite for the supernatural or simply seek the best pizza in town, Legends and Lore is the place to be. Come for the unforgettable flavors, stay for the captivating stories, and find yourself in a world where legends and pizza collide.
Get ready to rock with the electrifying sound of Catalyst, a band that's sure to leave you wanting more. With their powerful lyrics and killer riffs, Catalyst is a great sound in the world of rock music. You can listen and find Catalyst on Bandcamp, or go to the link at paranormal411.org and click on their banner.
All right, we're back, David.
All right.
Can
What's
you
up,
hear me?
Jason? How you doing, brother? I
Doing
can.
pretty good.
Coming in loud.
We're back after that quick break. If you just joined us, we're talking to Dr. Richard E. Carmen, author of The Voice, A Journey Through the Eyes of Spirit. And we're going to bring him back on. Welcome back.
Hello.
So, David, where was you at? You just wanting to ask him.
Well, we have a lot of ways we could kind of go because that's towards the end of the book. I had one thing before we got into that I kind of thought about since I started reading the book, and it's more towards the beginning of the book, or somewhere around there. The first time you went to see Adele, like you said, you was at the Scottish Rites Mason Temple, and your buddy had kind of talked you in. You didn't want to go, but your buddy kind of talked you into going, and so you went, and that's kind of where you met a lot of pivotal people that ended up kind of throughout the book. You met your wife, but you also met a few other people that that kind of went through this journey with you a little bit. And do you think that was something that was supposed to be, that it was supposed to happen that way?
Well, on the very first page of the front matter of the book, there's author's notes. And in there, I mentioned this specifically, that event and a few other events were a merger of a lot of people that event didn't produce. So I actually didn't meet Joe at that event. I did meet Rick and some other people, I think, at that event. But it was just a convenient way to, without getting caught up in having to explain a lot of other situations and a lot more pages. It was just a simple way to bring everybody together. So that event was, Adele herself was just an extraordinary channel.
Yeah.
If you want me, I can go into a little bit about who she was.
Yeah, that'd be cool. I mean, I know that, you have this one experience that you talked about, then the other one that you talked about a little bit ago, with the divining device where you was there. And she sounds like someone that's, I don't know, really in tune with what she did. And that's pretty fascinating too.
She wrote a book. If I have the numbers correct, I think she had, over the years, 20,000 copies that were printed, and she never charged for her book. She gave them away. She never charged for her sessions when she was at the Scottish Rite Temple, and she never charged for her private sessions, like when I would go down there or Joe and I would go down there. We would always leave money for her, but we'd hide it under her pillow in bed, in their bedroom. Friends of mine that we would go down, and when we would do that, and when we left, we'd say, "By the way, Adele, check your pillow before you go to bed." She was very appreciative, but she was extraordinary. I can tell you one remarkable thing that she did. In, I think it was 1967, the Apollo 1 blew up, the Apollo mission. Terrible tragedy. Ed White and Grisham and other astronauts were killed. It was just an utter tragedy. After that event, I can't tell you how long after that particular event, but Adele was in her kitchen, and I can't tell you the exact specifics of this, but I think she had a client that was like Joe and I would go down and sit at the table. A client was at the table with her, and spontaneously, the direction of what was being channeled stopped, and Ed White came in at the table and he came in with a message, and she's receiving the message. She has no idea what this information is, but she's receiving it and she writes it down. And the message was 2 times straight, now time to Ruyez. Now, Ruyez is capital R, capital U, capital Y, capital Z. It's not really a word, it's an acronym. 2 times straight, now time to whatever. So she writes it down, and later that evening, she goes to her husband and says, I got to tell you the strangest thing. And I was at the table, and this message came through, and it's a message from Ed White, who had died in that crash, in that explosion. And she says, I think I have to get this information to NASA. And so she asks her husband, do you think I should do that? I mean, this is kind of crazy. They may laugh at me, but do you think I should do that? And he says, no. So she writes the letter and mails it. And nothing ever happens. You know, she expected maybe, you know, a couple of weeks she might hear something, maybe a couple of months. 7 years later, her house is filled with people that want to experience the encounter with her. And so, you know, she's finishing with one guest, and then she brings in these other 2 guests who want to have a session with her. These are 2 men dressed in suits. They sit down at the table with her, and they start to kind of talk, and they go through the early process of confirming who they want to bring in at the table. And suddenly, Ed White comes back in, and she looks at these guys and says, I don't know why Ed White is coming in and you're asking about something, but Ed White is here. And they said, Adele, we are scientists with NASA. We got your letter. 7 years later.
Wow.
And so can you imagine 2 scientists from NASA don't identify themselves. Ed White comes in on his own through Adele and reveals that he's present. So now she asks, what does 2 times straight, whatever the message, RUYZ mean? And they explain that it has to do with the actual explosion. What that message was the link to solve the dilemma of how Apollo 1 blew up. She had the answer. They did not.
Wow. That's fantastic.
It is. So how did that, I don't know what you believed before, but how did that, did it change your perspective on life after death? Or
well, it immediately changed my perspective on her. She showed me the letter that NASA had written as confirmation about what she had revealed. The fact, again, that we're bringing scientists into this equation, you know, this really helped me being doubting Thomas, right? It really helped kind of cement in my trust in Adele, and information she gave me, some of which I put in the book, tied in perfectly with my direction, where this path was taking me. So I really trusted Adele's information.
I know where we kind of left off, talking about your vision that you had, or your dream, or your whatever it was, that of the 2 screens, and then the device that she had hanging up there. When you figured out kind of what the 2 screens were, it was like an aha moment that you had, and you asked if a buddy of yours had some a certain program that could help you look things up, like on the Old Testament and New Testament simultaneously.
A Bible search program.
Yeah. And that was pretty fascinating stuff, where you started going through and finding out, doing searches for certain words and finding out what they mean and stuff like that.
certain moments that occurred to me.
Like the fiery pillar for one.
Say again?
Like the fiery pillar that
Oh.
happened at your bed, at the bottom of your bed,
That was an enigma. I still have not figured out. I'm hoping someday somebody will knock on my door and say, Richard, you know what that was? I'm waiting.
But what's fascinating about the fiery pillar and the way you described it and other things, it reminds me in the Old Testament, when the Israelites were wandering in the desert for 40 years. It said that the glory of God was with them as a pillar of smoke by day, but a pillar of fire by night. And so it's pretty fascinating.
And that's exactly what it was. It was a pillar of fire. And it occurred at the foot of my bed. I'm sound asleep in the middle of the night. And somehow, if you're asleep, somebody turns on a bright light and goes through your eyelid, you can tell that, something's happening in the room. Mm-hmm. And so I'm sound asleep. I see a light go on, what I thought was a light, and I couldn't imagine that there's a light in my bedroom. I roll over, and this pillar of fire was maybe 6 feet, 8 feet off the end of the bed. And it was encased in what looked like glass, because the flames within the pillar were touching something, but it wouldn't go past a certain point. It was like a solid, invisible glass case. There was no heat, and it was very, very bright, and they were actual living flames. I mean, we're talking a fire and encased in this thing. I just, this has happened so late in my quest, so I had no fear now about this. I was okay with whatever it was. I knew it was, call it paranormal. It wasn't going to burn down the house or anything. Right. And this actual event occurred not where I describe it, which it doesn't matter. I only because of continuity in the story, I put the pillar in my home, but it actually occurred in a Big Sur cabin up in Big Sur, California, again in the middle of the night. And as I'm staring at this thing, and I'm expecting a voice to come out of it and talk with me or give me information or some interaction with it. There was no interaction at all. It was just there. And it was maybe 7 feet tall, 2.5 feet wide, and maybe a foot thick. It was hard to tell from my perspective. And after maybe a minute of this thing just sitting there, the sides merged together. And so now I've just got a pillar of light. It's just a beam of light floating. It's not touching the ground. It's not touching the ceiling. It's just a beam of light. And then the top and the bottom merge. Now I've got, and as this is happening, the room is getting darker and darker. And now we've got just a pearl of light floating, and the room is fairly dark. And then it's gone.
Wow.
I do not know what that experience was. I have never heard anybody else having that experience. I can't explain it. I can't quite tie it into my story, but it was just one more thing in the story. I'm sure now that the book is published, someone is going to say, oh, I know exactly what that was. So I'm waiting.
Yes, that'd be good. Get an email.
But that was one of the terms that I put into the word search. I had originally I hadn't thought of pillar of fire. I put in pillar of light. And so I'm searching, and the Bible program comes back, nothing found. And then it suggests, would you like pillar of fire? I thought, wow, that even better explains what it was, pillar of fire. And so I said, yes. And then it brings up in the old, I think it's the Old Testament. Now it's too many years since I've looked at this, where it occurs. And that's just one of several names and tags I put into this computer program. And suddenly I'm realizing, wow, my events are not, they're new to me, but they're even in the Bible.
Yes.
One of them, well, I don't want to maybe tell the whole story if someone's going to read the book, but
yes.
the night that I was, 3 months later, this encounter was supposed to occur. They gave me the date, as I said to you, Palm Springs, October 20th. So this was July when I was given that information. So we're all gathered in the house, and I'll avoid the first encounter that night at 2 a.m. So everybody's in the house. I think that there were forces that put most everybody to sleep. And I say sleep like a light sleep, even where they were sitting in the living room or on the floor with a pillow. And originally they were talking, and suddenly the house goes quiet. It's 2 a.m. and there's only 3 of us conscious. And 2 of them are 2 gals in the house and myself. We walk out to the back patio. Now, in the book itself, I've not revealed who the 3rd person was, but I do give a name to the one gal, and she and I walk, well, the 3 of us walk out. We'll just keep it to the 2 of us for the point of discussion here. And we witness a mothership. I mean, this was absolutely stunning. Everybody else in the house is like put into kind of a lull. And we are just, we are stupefied at what we were witnessing. That is the most gorgeous machine I've ever seen in my life flying. We call it a mothership. I couldn't tell because it was fairly far away, but it was massive. And I go into describing it in the book. So as we're standing outdoors, and the ship then makes its movement from right to left across the horizon in front of us, as it just about gets to where it's out of view on the left, people start walking out of the house. And we were very quiet. We weren't screaming and talking. We were just so stupefied and stunned that we were silent. You know, we were just whispering. How did people suddenly know to come out of the house, right? And so one after the other starts coming out of the house, and there's nothing to see. It's too late. So this gal and I described what we had witnessed to everybody else as they were coming out. A bigger event is what occurred a number of hours later. Now, this is 2 a.m. on a Sunday. Sunset, well, before sunset, not everybody, maybe half of the people left. By then, Christopher and David were there, and Nushka was there, and my sister. Now this event I'm going to tell you about was in my mom and dad's house in Palm Springs. They were going to be moving into the house, and they had not moved in yet, so the house was vacant but fully furnished. 2 blocks away was my sister's house where she was living. So you've got two homes fairly close together. And I had clinical practice. This is now Sunday night, just at sunset. So the sun is at the horizon. And I'm hugging Anushka, my niece, goodbye, outdoors. And we look up, and what do we see but a massive, massive cloud. Around the periphery of the cloud is a vapor like dry ice. And it continues to come down and disappear. And this cloud could have been 3 miles diameter. And Anushka and I looked at each other and we said the same thing. Mothership.
Yeah.
Had to be the mothership. And we never seen a cloud. No cloud does what we witnessed over our heads. So I think David and Christopher were over at my sister's house 2 blocks away, and I got on the phone. I said, "Hey, you guys, go outdoors and look in the sky." And they came back and said, "Holy smokes, this is nuts." mind you, 2 homes in Palm Springs. You got a cloud above, and the cloud above extended beyond the house I was in, which was my mom and dad's house, and beyond my sister's and her husband's house. This is how massive the cloud was. And this is a very long way of going about answering your question. So in the Bible search, back to my office, I put in cloud, and up comes these remarkable moments in the Old Testament talking about the cloud and what voice is coming out of the cloud even.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I'm sorry for taking so long to describe
No, you're
this,
fine.
but one more link, it's just a scientist in search of the divine. What could be crazier, right?
Right. Right. Well, and that's something that I found fascinating about that part too, is that, in the book, you put in a lot of these search words, and then, you've almost got whole paragraphs explaining, what happened when you put in the search word and stuff like that. And that was really, really, really good. When did the aha moment come that this was part of that vision that you had of the 2 screens?
Well, the 2 screens were blank. One was
Yep.
pink and one was baby blue, completely blank. And when I was sitting at the computer, actually before I began the search, when I had requested the software, I'm waiting for the software, and I'm looking at these 2 Apple computers. Excuse me, the one Apple computer with 2 screens, and they're blank. I'm just waiting to start it up and waiting for the computer, the software. And I'm looking at these 2 blank screens, thinking, "Wow, was that what that vision implied?" The screens were blank because I had to figure this out. That's the only conclusion I came up with. So yeah.
That was fascinating too, because when you talked about that part in the book, and then you talked about getting the software and starting to go through that whole process of finding these or looking up these words and finding the definitions for these words and stuff. You start thinking, because you hear a lot of people talk about it all the time, right? Like I just said, I believe that there were all kinds of things like this in the Bible, and where I said God was with them as a pillar of smoke by day and a pillar of fire by night. I think the Bible's full of these things, and most people are so got blinders on, and they're such in that dogmatic view of this is how it's got to be because this is how I've always been told that it was. No one ever will take those blinders off and start reading things and thinking for themselves.
Right, David. Yes. And the pillar of fire with the Israelites, as it's described, typically it's light, it's direction, it's guidance along their path. They speak of it as brightness, a light in the desert. I interpreted it differently after my experience. I interpreted or reinterpreted what some biblical scholars have written from light to knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
And I describe this in that section of the book, that the pillar of fire, at least from my interpretation, is knowledge. It's yielding knowledge.
That makes sense. So,
and that's absolutely truth from my journey, because what I learned was remarkable. And what they told me was remarkable, messages of which I transcribed in the book. Absolutely put me on the path that I needed to be on. And if readers listen carefully to what is revealed in all these messages, there aren't that many in the book, you can't go wrong.
Yeah, that's the one that I found pretty fascinating too is when you was coming off the mountain and you said that a voice kind of like an angel spoke to you, and you had to you pulled over and you wrote down the message and everything. And it was a long message too. I mean, it
Yep.
had to take you a while.
Oh, I was writing as fast as the voice was speaking. I was fully awake. I had been up at the top of Mount Tamalpais, which I had gone to usually around December every year. Between Christmas and New Year's, I would just voyage up there and meditate and pray. And it's just magical up in that area of Northern California. So I was encouraged spiritually to go up there at that particular time. It was earlier than December, and had been up there all day. Arrived in the morning. Arrived in the early afternoon. Drove up there all morning, and there was a haze that you could see San Francisco, and you could see the fog and the haze coming. And as the sun was going down further, the haze was starting to move up the mountain. And as it was climbing, the sun was going down, and such magic. And when that was all over, I'm climbing down from the summit to my car. I'm the only car there in the parking lot. And by then it was dark. And as I was driving, it couldn't have been 45 seconds that I could feel the voice coming. And this was in the book is the last transmission that I report. This transmission was, again, life-changing. It was just, I don't have words for it. I'm sure some people will read and say, I have no idea what you're talking about.
The message is profound.
It is profound.
It's a very profound message, and
it was for me. And if enough of us in the world just quiet our mind enough, just to listen within, imagine a world where everybody is capable of listening and quieting the mind enough to know that you can't kill anybody. You can't kill anybody.
Yeah.
What a world we'd be living in. There'd be no wars.
yes,
All we would have, hopefully, would be love and compassion. There'd be no food shortage. There is no food shortage now. Food shortage anywhere you look in the world is not a food shortage problem. It is a political decision.
Yep.
I'll share one other thing with you. Christopher Hills, I don't know if you know the name. He was a scientist, PhD scientist back in the day. He was remarkable. He wrote Nuclear Evolution and a number of different books. I actually had a copy of his Nuclear Evolution book in my house. It was one of many that I had read. And I can't remember even how I met him. He called me one day. He was in town, and he said, let's get together. So I said, well, come over to the house. So he comes over to the house, and it was early in the evening, and it was just after dinner. And I said, well, where are you staying tonight? And he said, well, I have no place to stay. He could afford to stay anywhere he wanted. I said, well, let's stay here. I have a second bedroom. So we got talking all night, and he shared with me an experience that he had in Ethiopia, talking about food shortage. He was the pioneer behind green algae, spirulina. He formed the company, can't think of the name of the company right now, but it will probably come to me. Something spirulina. And it was a multi-level company. I think thousands of people are multi-level, and I was in his company. So here, we're talking, and he's sharing about his experience in Ethiopia, where he taught the starving Ethiopian families to grow algae and scrape it off of the lake, put it on rocks, dry it, and consume it. and you can live indefinitely. You can live months. I think he told me that don't quote me on this, I think he said 4 months he lived on nothing but spirulina. It's got all the essential amino acids and almost all the non-essential amino acids. So it just keeps you alive. And look what's going on in Ukraine, and the people there that can't get food. In Gaza, the same thing. It's even worse there. They're starving to death. All they need is spirulina, right? So what I'm sharing with you is there is no food shortage. So where you see everybody starving, and no matter what country, and you can pick different countries in the world right now, people are starving, children are starving. It's a political decision. After, I think he said he was there 6 months, solving the starvation problem in Ethiopia, and he was thrown out of the country.
Yeah. Can't have the people, eating, because then they might have the time to overthrow their government that they don't like.
Right.
Yeah.
So I thought this was something worth sharing.
Yeah, that's what's terrible about stuff like that is that that's the part of everything that happens in this world that makes you wonder if we will ever get to that next level. Because these politicians and warlords in other countries and stuff like that have a monopoly on what you was talking about earlier, right? Fear is one thing that makes people do things that they wouldn't normally do, and so they try to keep everybody in a perpetual state of fear. I stopped watching news and stuff like that a couple of years ago, because that's all it is. It's a constant battle between you and them. They're constantly bombarding you with, oh, this is going to kill you. This is going to kill you. This is going to happen. This happened today. 5 people over here died yesterday. And, and that's all they want to tell you is just negative, 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 negative. And negative begets negative. The more negative you take in, the more negative you're going to exude, And I told you I've been on this quest myself for the last few years of trying to take all that out of my life. The negative, I've even had to kind of push certain people to the background because they were friends, but they're negative all the time. Negative.
Yep.
And if that's all that enters in your head, then you don't have room for the positive. And I believe that if you bring positive, then positive comes back to you.
Agreed. Absolutely.
And if we had more people like you're saying that thought that way, and that believed in that stuff, and that actually, tried to take every day and thank somebody for something, no matter how bad of a day you might have had, try to still instill positivity into the life and into other people, then that will come back to you.
It will, and you can change the world by doing that.
Yeah. Right.
And if we all did it, imagine the world we'd be living in.
Yeah. It definitely looked different than it does today, for sure.
Yeah.
100%.
Good for you that you're doing that.
It's a hard journey.
It is a very hard journey.
Yes, sir.
But if you're committed, you can do it.
Yes.
As you read in my book, that's exactly how I started. I mean, I gave up everything. I gave up over-the-counter. Wasn't doing drugs, but I gave up over-the-counter drugs. Aspirin or whatever you'd buy. I gave up sex. I gave up relationships with women. It was just I couldn't pull the right relationship together, and I said I'm done till I figure out my life.
Right.
So I'm glad to hear you doing very much the same.
Yes. Yeah, it's been a spiritual journey that I've been on. Like I said, it's going on about 2 years now, and like I said, it's hard. It's hard because it seems like the more that you understand and you start realizing the truth in these things, the world beats back at you to try to turn you back into who you were.
Right.
So
and the world around you doesn't necessarily see the inward change.
Yes.
You know, the interchange as you're changing and evolving, they still see the old David or the old
Yes.
Richard.
Yep.
You know?
Yep.
So, yeah.
It's hard.
I was going to ask you, this voice that came to you, was it always the same voice? I mean, or was it just
No,
was
the original voice was, well, the first time I ever heard a voice was the telepathic invitation. And so, again, that was July of 85. So I'm given the invitation, and that voice, to my knowledge, never reappeared. But then this spiritual male voice began, as David was describing. I was in the restaurant and I was hesitant to, not only hesitant to leave a tip, I was going to teach the waitress a lesson. But the lesson was on me.
Yeah.
You know, and this voice continued to communicate with me. And, you know, what happened on some of these events, I can't even discuss with you. It's in the book. I can write it. But I dare not even try to describe it. You'll see a grown man cry.
Yeah.
The bee and the butterfly garden experience is something I have never talked about in public with anybody outside my immediate core group. And even in this core group, they haven't heard the story. It's too soulful to talk about. I just can't do it. But most of the other events I can talk about.
Yeah, that was one in the book that I read that was pretty interesting, where, you know, it kept asking you, where do you want to see this butterfly? Do you want to see, do you want it to land on your foot, and then the bee and all that stuff. And that was amazing. And that would have been just an amazing experience to have. And then, what even happened afterwards, where they switched feet and switched big toes and stuff. And then how they flew off and stuff. That would be, I don't know. I think that would be something to be able to see, and have the voice tell you, hey, do you want this? That was amazing.
To viewers who may not have read the story yet, the voice was inviting the bee and the butterfly to land on me and asking for my permission, and telling me where the bee and the butterfly would exactly land on me. And so, and then it's the whole thing of this interaction with the same voice. This is the same voice that was talking to me before, or it was my guide, which is a whole nother story, which we need a whole nother session with.
That one,
I was going to ask you. Yeah.
Go ahead, Jason.
I was just going to ask you, do you think it was your spirit guide, or is it?
Well,
it really? I don't know what the voice could be, but
he was told by somebody who his spirit guide was, or
you don't have to say, but
yeah,
I was told by Adele,
yep,
who was my master teacher, and Adele said everybody's got a master teacher, and sometimes multiple guides in addition, but everybody has a master teacher. And so, yes, this voice could be my master teacher.
Okay.
And definitely read the book to find out who that master teacher is, because that'll blow your mind right there by itself. So
Get the book.
Get the book for sure. Yeah, I'll have to say, even if it was just to find out who his master teacher was. But I think, like we was talking at the beginning of this, before we even started the show and stuff, and the book itself, you kind of talk about it throughout the book and stuff about, enlightenment and stuff like that. Do you think that will come? Do you think that enlightenment will come? Do you think that we will actually see that
In our lifetime?
in our lifetime?
I would love that to happen in our lifetime. Things are moving at a rapid pace now. You can see it with your own eyes. You can see climate change. You can see the evolution over the last 40 years in knowledge and experiences with paranormal and UFOs and extraterrestrials, people who witness it, photograph it, videography on it, people who have had intimate interchanges like myself with extraterrestrials and otherworldly beings. Look at the level we're at now compared to 20 or 40 years ago.
Right.
40 years ago was when I was involved in my invitation to the extraterrestrial encounter. Going from that point, I couldn't talk about this stuff with certain people. I couldn't go public. You back in those days, you heard about people that appeared to have been missing or dead. You go public, Men in Black. That was a real deal. I don't know if they're still around, but I mean, that was a real thing back in the day.
Yes.
A lot of fear, and you had to shut up about this stuff.
Yep.
So, so 40 years of silence for me, that's enough.
Yeah.
Now, my friends and scholars, colleagues that get wind of what I'm releasing, they're going to go nuts.
Yeah. You think that they're going to be like, uh-oh, or do you think that they're more understanding now because it is more mainstream?
Well, I can tell you with certain people that I've talked with, we're talking about editors in big publications. No, you have to understand medicine and science is still very conservative.
Right.
While guys like you and me in our group and this genre moves at a rapid pace,
yes,
science and medicine is sluggish. You gotta observe it, measure it, repeat it, observe it, measure it, have other scientists look at it, other scientists in other countries, and start collecting the data. Oh my God, this will take you decades, right?
Yeah, a lifetime for just one thing.
So I'm hoping that the pace that we're at now seems unusually rapid. I'm looking at climate change, and it's unbelievable. We are now, as of today, the warmest winter on record, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, things. Mother Earth is reacting.
Right.
So this will be a challenge because I think events could happen where extraterrestrials will have to intervene, or there could be massive casualties.
Right.
I'm not predicting it, but I'm just saying that look at the trend, Look at the trend and then project that forward at this pace.
Right.
It doesn't look good.
Just being exponential.
I think David and myself have got this feeling that something bad is going to happen soon. I mean, you can just feel it.
Yeah.
Nothing's, I'm like him. I don't listen to the news or anything, but when I do get a glimpse of the news, it's nothing but terrible stuff.
Yeah. Well, it's so bad for me and stuff, and that I've been feeling it for long enough that we've started going away from mainstream as much as we can at our house. So we've got chickens, and we've got, we grow huge gardens every year, and the wife cans, and the wife does all those things, and because I don't know what I feel that we're coming to at some point is a fork in the road, and I just feel that this fork is going to be a rough patch for a little while, and that we need to try to be as self-sufficient as we can for a little bit.
Think spirulina.
Yes. You know what's funny about that is I'm wondering if that spirulina is the same thing. A long time ago, I was watching a documentary on manna that was talking about a device that I guess the Israelites talked about this device taking in the breath of God and doing all these things, and a guy kind of put together a device depending on the description of what it was. And he said what it is that it's this device. If you put it together, it makes some kind of a like spirulina or something. And that's why they, on the 6th day, they got a double portion. And then on the 7th day, they got nothing. That's why they got the double portion on the 6th day. He said, because every 7th day you would have to take the machine apart, clean it, and put it back together, and then it would start working again for the next week.
Interesting.
And he drew diagrams of exactly how it would work, and it was pretty fascinating on that.
Interesting. Yeah.
And that was a documentary. It had to be 10, 15 years ago or so. That was on the History Channel talking about it.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah. Well, sir, manna from heaven could be something the likes of spirulina,
Yeah. Because it was supposed to be perfect food, like what you was talking about, so
blue-green algae.
Yeah.
Yep.
Pretty interesting. Things just click sometimes. The light went on above my head.
Yeah, I seen it. So we got about,
as you can see it.
We got about 12 more minutes. If you want to, you can just, if you can maybe want to tell the readers what your message is from the book, and maybe, if you want to convey it to them, but definitely they need to go get the book and read it.
Yeah.
Sure.
Need to find out where to get it.
Yeah. The book is on Amazon, and it's ebook is $9 and change, and the soft cover is $18. So it's available at Amazon. And the essence of the book is the essence of my journey, what I learned, what I discovered, realizing that we are not alone. And when you reach out for help, it's there. I guarantee you 100%, I speak from experience, that those who suffer don't need to suffer, that you can reach out spiritually. You can touch the divine. I know, because I did it. It doesn't have to be a voice. The divine can act in many different ways. The voice was only in my life back in 85, 86. And then things took a shift. It was no longer a voice. It was just as I describe in the book, as in one of the transmissions, I was told that be observant of the movement of space. And this is how the divine interacts with us, is the movement of space. I'll just give you one quick story. I was a trustee on a few different trusts. And in this one particular trust, I had to make a financial decision, and it was an important one. And I just didn't know if I was going to make the right decision for the recipient of the trust. And it was weighing heavy on me. And there was a gal cutting hair in Sedona, a hairstylist named Margie Gucci. And she had, this is several years ago, she had her own hair salon. And my haircut was going to be 2:00, and I got there probably 20 to 2, and I climbed up to the second story. It's like an old house, and she wasn't going to be there to 2:00, and I go over to the glider, a 2-seater glider on the balcony, and right in front of the balcony, maybe 2 feet in front of the glider, is the railing, a wood railing. So I got up onto the seat and I closed my eyes and I started meditating. And I was wondering what my mother would think about my decision, the financial decision I already made in this trust. It was a big financial decision. And immediately, I'd say 5 seconds after I had that thought, a bird, my eyes are still closed, a bird landed on the railing facing me, and it's dancing along the railing right in front of me. My eyes are still closed. I didn't know where the bird was. And I popped my eyes open, and here's this bird looking right at me, and it's dancing along the wood railing, and it's just singing and singing and singing. And I'm not making any correlation to anything other than, wow, this bird just landed and it's talking to me. How beautiful. And I'm just expressing my love to the bird. Thank you so much for singing to me. But it was unusual that it wasn't facing out. It was looking at me. And it wasn't stopping. It was just dancing, 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 chirping, 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 chirping. And this went on for, I'd say, 2 minutes. And finally, the bird stopped. And it's just looking at me. And I'm looking at the bird, and I realize, wow, what a beautiful bird. It's about the size of a sparrow. And it's got fine red hair on the top. It wasn't a cardinal. It was, much smaller than that. Like I say, a sparrow. And I realized, wow, red hair. My mother had red hair. She was a natural redhead. And I'm thinking, is that possible? This bird is singing to me, acknowledging that my decision in the trust was blessed.
Yes.
After I came to that realization, the bird flew away.
Mm.
Margie comes climbing up the steps at 2:00, and I tell her this story, and she's stunned. Haircut ends. I leave. 4 weeks later, I come back for my next haircut, and she says, Richard, I have to tell you something amazing. The bird that you saw that day came back every day for 2 weeks and kept pecking at my window. It wanted to come in. It would dance at my windowsill while I was cutting hair and just asking to come in.
Wow.
So this is my message, is thought is intimately, integrally linked to our reality.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Absolutely.
a good message.
Well, you could kind of say science almost says that too, right? Because string theory says everything is wave. It is all wave. Everything's a wave. There's no real solid matter in anything, that we just perceive it that way because our vibration and the vibration of solid matter just makes it seem that it's solid, but it's not.
True.
And there's a lot of stuff in when you get down into it, as far as even the Christian Bible or Buddhism and a lot of other Taoist teachings and stuff, where they talk about what you say. The Bible talks about your words are like a double-edged sword and stuff like that. So yeah, that's a good message.
Yeah,
it's a good message.
Well, Dr. Carmen, we want to thank you for coming on and sharing it with us and telling us about your experiences.
Well, thank you, Jason. Thank you, David, both for the opportunity.
Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, I will get back with you with an email to the links to everything. And
I have one question real quick. Do you have I don't remember in the very back of the book. Do you have a way that people, if they do have anything as far as like what you just talked about, and want to know if anyone else has had a pillar of fire in their bedroom or anything like that, do you have a way that people could reach you and get a hold of you?
Yeah, absolutely. info@auriclebooks.com. Auricle is the ear, AURICLE. So it's, info@auriclebooks.com.
Okay. Awesome.
And I will respond.
Awesome. Yeah. I figured everybody might need that.
All right. So if you haven't got his book, you need to go to Amazon and get it. It's a good one.
That's a beautiful cover that's behind Jason right there.
Yeah, I hope you don't mind if I use your cover.
Oh, it's beautiful. Thank you.
All right, Dr. Cameron, we want to thank you again for coming on, and hopefully we can do it again sometime in the future.
I hope so. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. You have a good night.
Thank you. You too. God bless.
Thank you. God bless.
All right. That was Dr. Richard E. Carmen. I keep saying Cameron for some reason. Carmen.
Carmen. Yes.
Author
like
of
behind
the voice.
Jason there, the voice of Journey Through the Eyes of Spirit, right?
Yes. Very good book. And got a great message too. If we
It
could
is.
all, hear this voice and be kind to one another, the world will change.
Yeah, and I think he's right too when he was talking about the fact that I think if everybody just took time, slowed down for a minute, and took the time for themselves to do some introspection, to think inward, we might all hear the voice.
Yeah. I mean, could just be working its way up to, to the big change, the big awakening that we need.
Yeah.
Would be
100%.
nice.
Yep.
So it's time for us to go. We hope you enjoyed the show. David, do you have anything?
I just want to remind everybody that we've got a book coming out soon. Part 2, East Tennessee Hauntings and Lore. Be looking for it. We'll make sure to tell you because we're going to do a 30-day pre-sale. But we are looking for people that might want to pre-read the book for us, with us. And if you do want to do that, you can go to info@paranormal411.org. That's info@paranormal411.org. And just shoot us an email saying that you'd like to do a pre-reading on the book. And also, we at the same email address, if you have a great story or anything else that you'd like to tell us, UFO, Bigfoot, anything paranormal, we'd love to hear from you.
Oh, yeah. Hopefully we'll be back next week with another show. Right, David?
Yes. I'll be home next week. Yes.
Right.
I will be home next week. I got a 2-day run next week, so I will be home.
All right. I want to thank everybody again for watching and listening, and we'll see you next time.
Have a good night. Have a good weekend.
Welcome to Paranormal 411, coming to you from an undisclosed location deep within the Appalachian Mountains, with your hosts David Reagan and Jason Scott, bringing you the unknown. You're listening to Paranormal 411.